And now we come to this one, which is titled Husband Vent. She says, I'm a stay-at-home mom and my husband has a pretty flexible schedule. I do all the housework unless I specifically ask him to do something, and he does it without hesitation. He's been helping out a lot with our toddler and changes our baby's diapers when needed. She's exclusively breastfed, so he can't really do much more than that. Tonight, he asked me if he could go to the bar for a drink. I said no. I didn't really have a reason other than our baby is 8 days old and I think it's ridiculous. He went to his mom's to get food that she had made for us and went to the bar. He texted me when he was there. He wasn't there long, so he probably had one drink. Still, I'm so angry. I specifically said no, and he did it anyways. He said I didn't really give a reason, so he thought I was being unreasonable. He also said that both girls were sleeping, so I didn't need help at the time. This is true. Am I being ridiculous for being upset? I don't even want to talk to him and just want to pack up both children tomorrow and go to my mom's for the day to get away from him. I want to rule out if I have a reason to be upset or if it's my hormones. Today we are just surrounded by totally unreasonable people. So I think OP is completely unreasonable. I do think it's a little bit of a hormonal reaction, but you know what? Maybe she's angry for other reasons. Generally, the moment that you say, hey, like in general, the fact that he asked means that he was being super polite. I wouldn't phrase it as a question. If I really wanted to go somewhere, I would probably say something like, hey, I'd really like to do X. Would that be okay with you? And that's kind of already going above and beyond. And to get a response from my spouse where I feel like he doesn't give a crap about me wanting to do X and he's just like, no, for no reason. And she says herself, I had no reason other than the baby is only 8 days old and she thinks it's ridiculous that he has the thought of wanting to go out and do something. Clearly that came through. Clearly he felt, hey, she has no reason to be against this. She's just saying no for the sake of it. Maybe she's just being angry and venting. And he was like, you know what, whatever. 8 days after the birth of a child seems like a reasonable amount of time for me if he wants to meet up with some friends for them to say, hey, congrats. How is it? How are you doing? And when she also says herself that he wasn't there for very long, he is a great dad. He helps out without hesitation whenever she asks him to do anything. Like, she has no reason to be angry and annoyed at him, and there's just nothing in the picture here. Also, the fact that both babies or both of their kids were asleep at the time, so like he knew that they were asleep, he knew that it was fine, he knew that it was okay, and then he was like, all right, I'm just gonna take like half an hour out and go to the bar, have one drink, meet up with some people, and then I'm gonna come straight back home. So clearly he went out of his way to just be a considerate partner, to be there for her, to help her out, to make sure that he was not prioritizing his drinking over the kids or looking after the kids or over her and being able to help her. And so there's absolutely no reason to look at this situation and be like, hey, you're being totally unreasonable by wanting to go out somewhere. Like that's just, there's nothing here that implies that. So yes, I think that she is being unreasonable. If I were her, I would probably take the fact that like she kind of rationalizes it all for herself already in the thread, you know, and she's trying to be like, nah, I think it's ridiculous. But she understands completely why he reacted in the way that he did. And she definitely has an inkling that she's being unreasonable about it. You can see here the comments are kind of in the middle. First person says, you're not being ridiculous for being upset because he didn't communicate that he was going to go anyway. I'd be upset with my husband too. But it's also valid that he feels upset if he doesn't feel like a good reason was given for your terms, even if it feels like it should be obvious. I'd say it's just a communication issue. All feelings are valid here, but definitely talk about it when you both feel calm. Now, yeah, but I wouldn't consider it to be lying. If I said no and my husband was like, well, okay, I would be annoyed, but I would be annoyed knowing that I was kind of being bitchy the first time round, and then he's calling me out on it. That's how I would feel. If my husband decided to go along and do something after I was like, no, please don't do that, then we would probably fight about it. But I would also understand that number one, me saying no for no reason is kind of asking for it. And number two, if I was not so bitchy, he would have told me in a different way. And so it's my fault, you know, for asking for it. Next person says, yeah, no, my husband ain't going to no effing bar if my baby's 8 days old. And someone replies to this, ditto this, I'd pack a bag and tell him to go stay elsewhere if he thinks that that's appropriate. If he wanted a drink, he can drink at home. He's not breastfeeding a fresh little baby. If it were 8 weeks postpartum, then fine, go to a bar for a bit, whatever. But 8 days? No. This is I don't know what it is about people that they get so much glee and joy from watching relationships fall apart over things that are completely ridiculous and unnecessary. This is such a perfect example of this does not matter. The fact that it even occurred to her to say, hey, I want to pack up a bag and take both children away from my husband, who is a great father, who helps me out all the time, who listens to me, who's considerate of my needs, who even thought, hey, the kids are asleep, so I'm not needed right now, that he even had that thought before making a decision, who asks me before he wants to go somewhere, but expects that I will also extend him the courtesy of being a reasonable person. I will take my kids away from that type of father and run away to my mom's because of this type of ridiculously small, tiny scenario and situation. It's so bad. It's awful. It's such a terrible attitude. It's such a terrible perspective. It's such a harmful one. And the outcome is just families that are broken for absolutely no reason. So no, both of these comments are just terrible. Terrible. And then next person reply, or one of the next comments is from this person. She says, my husband did something similar when baby was 8 days old. He asked to go to a movie after our toddler was asleep at night. At first, I was so mad that he would even think going out was okay. But when I was honest with myself, I realized that the reason I was mad was because I couldn't go. And it seemed so unfair to me that he could even consider leaving. I said yes once I realized that the only reason for no was that I was jealous that he could just go live his normal life. I was mad the whole time he was gone, don't get me wrong, but it was more mad at the situation than actually mad at him. And that really highlights to me how much of being a mother, especially a breastfeeding mom, especially in those very first days after having a baby, is connected with this vitriol and anger and frustration at your life circumstances just being different. That now you have something else to consider that you didn't have to consider before. This idea that you're chained to your house or to your home or to your baby because you're breastfeeding and because you're needed for them. And because, they have so many needs in those early few weeks that they need to sleep all the time, they need to nurse all the time, they need to be changed, they need to be comfortable, they need to be washed, etc., etc. That all you're doing as a mom in that first period of time is looking after your baby. And the amount of, I feel like people want to reject that. People want to say, hey, no, you know what? I'm free. I want to be free to do whatever I want 100% of the time, no matter what. And they don't see this greater purpose to the fact that you brought a life into the world and now you have to sustain it and nurture it and watch it grow until it can stand to be away from you for any period of time. That there is no, it's like this expectation that, hey, you're pregnant where a baby is literally inside you and then you give birth and now the baby is outside you. And the expectation is that these are like, there's a line in the sand that the moment you cross it, it's like, okay, now we're separate people. Now my baby is just a completely separate human being. He can just be away from me all the time. And obviously that's not the case. You can think of it as like a gradual line. It's like a wave, when you're pregnant, the baby is literally inside you. And then when he's outside you, of course, he still needs to be super, super close to you all the time because that's what a baby needs. That's how the baby understands, hey, you know what? I still have a mom right here and I'm safe and I'm looked after and I'm comfortable. That's how they interact with the world in that first period of time. And so much of how women feel at this time and the anger they feel and the jealousy they feel and the resentment towards their husbands comes from this rebellion or this desire, this innate desire to rebel against this just fact of life and the fact of biology. And the fact that it happens during this time when you know it's temporary, you know that it's just going to be a few weeks or a few months or a few years. And then the shape of your life and the relationship that you have with your kid will completely change. And you will be able to go out for a drink when you want as well. Like it's not going to take that long, but being tied for just that short period of time is so hard for so many people. And I honestly believe that it comes from this complete lack of just understanding of reality and not being prepared for it, not understanding this is what it will look like. This is what your life will look like for a few weeks after you give birth, because you cannot go from being pregnant to having a baby out and expect that the distance that you can suddenly just have so much distance between you and your baby. That's not how that works. The transition is a much slower one. So at the very least, this person here was self-reflective enough that she understood that the reason she wanted to say no was because she was jealous. And then she also understood, hey, this is not a fair reason to try and stop my husband from doing things that he wants to do or that are good for him for whatever reason. And then the one person that I found in the comments who says, yes, you are being ridiculous. Seriously, one drink. He was away for a very short time. Exactly. A bunch of people do second her here. One person says, I agree, my baby is 10 days old and I told my husband to go to the bar for a bit. He's been super helpful and he deserves a break and some adult conversation. He was home within an hour or so and then proceeded to take the night shift so I could sleep because he felt refreshed. Like, it's great when people are actually working together and they're on the same page and they understand that being parents means making some sacrifices, but that being a couple also means you can help each other out and you can give each other time. And so I wish for more people that, especially when they have great husbands and great fathers, and when they feel like they're already supported, that instead of taking that out on them, taking out your frustration and your inability to accept and deal with and process the situation that you find yourself in, the change that you experience, and just adjusting to that, instead of taking out their frustration at that on their husband and becoming resentful, that you try to understand that this frustration is temporary, that your circumstances will change, that you're mostly rebelling against the change that's happening in your life, and all changes come with a period of growth. And that part of just being happy with your life from now on is accepting that there's a transition phase that you're going through right now and that you will get through it. You will get through it. It's not a big deal. Do not freak out if your amazing husbands do small things for themselves, and don't consider leaving, packing up, taking your babies and running away for these types of conflicts. They're really small conflicts. You should always look at them in the broader context of your life together. And it's really, really sad, really unfortunate if relationships break down because of small things like this. What a poor husband.